Yep. What's up, guys? So today I thought I would try a different video. It'll still be like in the realm of game development, but instead of like working on something, I'm gonna have a video looping in the background talking about my experience. So as the title of the video states, I just want to share my experience of how I became a better technical artist because of failure. Now, as a caveat to the video, I failed 3, but I just want to focus in on one specific one because the other one I never got past the HR interview, and then the other one was a mini LinkedIn interview. Now, the one I want to focus on, I got to the technical interview stage, and it was one of the longest and most grueling interviews I was ever in. And the silver lining from failing that is I came out with an amazing mentor. And not only that, he listed everything I was good at and then things I needed to get good at to understand how to be a great technical artist, right? Because even then, after the interview, they gave me very detailed feedback on what I know and what I don't know. Now, even though I might have a video looping in the background, I will drop the list of what I think could also help you be better and help you learn. And additionally, I will also make a document that you can download and go through. Without further ado, I'm just gonna dive right into it and then just yap about my experience, what I got asked, my takeaways, and where I went with it, and maybe where you can take it as well from the document, you know. So just to give more context, before I became a technical artist, I worked as a 3D artist, right? So when I had gotten the chance to interview, they were offering me a senior position. And at that time, I was just shooting from the hip as a technical artist and learning as I go. You know, when you do things with no real understanding, but you just do things and you're able to get them done. At some point you hit a ceiling because you don't understand on a fundamental level how to solve a problem. And I'm really thankful that this interview opened my eyes, and I'm thankful for my mentor for opening my eyes. I'll just start by listing the feedback for you that I got from the interview. Then I'll go a little deeper into the questions I got asked. So these were the detailed first impressions from the interviewer. Overall, I really like this candidate for his mindset and attitude. He has mostly worked as a 3D artist so far, and on those skills alone, I would rate him as a senior. However, he is new to technical art itself, and for this reason lacks a lot of technical knowledge. I think he has great potential as he seems to have a natural interest in this, and his thought process is technically oriented, actively looking for mentorship. So within the feedback, there are main headings covering main topics of the interview, right? So I'll just start with this one: technical skills in Unreal specifically. They were working on an Unreal project at the time. So, base understanding of asset actors and levels in the engine and can comfortably work with them. Good understanding of the material editor, basic optimization and understanding. Can edit and simplify materials on a base level. Basic understanding of blueprints and their function and the relationship with the editor. Can comfortably work with them up until a certain level of complexity. Basic understanding of particle systems, mostly Niagara, but not too technical with it. No knowledge of UMG, UI and widgets. no experience with configs. I'm not gonna lie, I still don't know what that is. But anyway, some base level understanding of the stats system and can use it to identify main scene bottlenecks. No experience in creating and modifying editor tools. I still can't do that. But we'll get into that. The secondary main topic was performance and optimization. So I'm just gonna read it again. I'm gonna read through everything. Base level understanding of principles of performance optimization. Not a lot of CPU knowledge. Can hardly think of anything on the CPU. Now I know anything that's game thread related. But anyway, can name basic GPU bottleneck and tick that runs on it. Almost no experience with memory, but understands the concept of utilizing compression and adjusting content to reduce its usage. And then underneath the computer graphics topic or heading, it says very little knowledge about rendering apart from its practical utilization. See, this is what I was talking about, just doing things with no understanding but just action. Knows about different texture types and some basic understanding of PBR, IBL, and per pixel lighting optimization and functioning, but very confused with all the terminology. Understands the differences of static and dynamic lighting and very little else. No grasp of the GPU pipeline and how it functions under the hood. No knowledge of buffers, blending, or filtering. No real 3D math knowledge. And then we have a really short section or heading, physics and vision, like no real light physics knowledge. Now I think this falls under rendering and computer graphics, but basically understanding how lights interact with everything and how light reacts to PBR in general. Then the last piece of this section is no real camera and optics knowledge. Now, to be honest, I still don't get this part of the feedback to this day, and yes, I know I have access to the guy to ask, but my takeaway from it was understanding how cameras in general work. And that's why I think it would also fall under rendering as well, because if you understand how you can use your camera to render a frame and what you're rendering from the camera, it becomes much easier to optimize for such things. But again, I could be reaching or coming up with my own conclusion. And then there is the general development section, right? So I'll just read these again. Understand and is comfortable with version control on a base level. Has some knowledge with C++, understands the basics of programming like variables, methods, classes, but no advanced understanding of things like pointers and references. And no real multi-platform experience. I came back to this one, and I will have my first title on on multiple platforms, but that's a conversation for another video. And then lastly, 3D art skills. So it says here has a 3D art background. Like I said, I came from a modeling background as a character artist. Is mid to senior level in modeling, good understanding of texturing tools, techniques, and can comfortably create and edit them in procedural and standard software. good understanding of rigging and low understanding of animation. I'm not gonna lie, I low-key still have a low understanding of animation, outside of like, some optimizations here and there, but that's for further down the line. Okay, let me not get sidetracked. And well familiar with all major content creation suites. And right at the bottom, we have a conclusion. The candidate is still transitioning, so he is lacking a lot of rendering and technical understanding, but has a great technical mindset, and I believe he is a rough gem with a lot of potential. He is looking for mentorship as well, and I am willing to provide this for him if he is hired. Didn't get hired, but I still got the mentorship, so hey, silver lining, right? That aside, due to his lack in many areas, I am rating him L3 close to L4, high junior, low mid. And you know what, I can't be mad at that rating, because I got that interview 1 year in being a technical artist, and hearing that type of rating with just shooting from the hip, it meant a lot, and it said a lot. It's like, okay, you are on the right path, right? But you just need someone to guide you and show you the way. Now I'm just gonna get into some of the questions they asked, or rather questions I remember them asking. But the way the interview went is they would first ask a question, and then it would be a very simple question, something you can answer, right? And then they start diving a bit deeper, or like expanding on that question to test your knowledge of what was asked. So an example would be a question around the material editor, right? They would ask you, okay, what do you know about the material editor? So now, for example, that question is pretty open-ended, right? So how you answer determines how they would dive deeper or explore, or like, explore the concept further. So, okay, what do you know about the material editor? How do you use it? What do you think are the most expensive nodes? Do you understand material functions? Do you understand the difference between, the vertex shader or the pixel shader? Things like that. The cost of a material. How do you optimize a material? What would you go about doing if you were trying to optimize a material? It gets deeper and deeper, just starting from a very surface level question. And I also forgot this part, right? They would ask you what your interests were, or what do you like doing the most, because this now determines which team they would put you on, what tasks they would give you. But as the interview goes on, or post-interview, you realize that, okay, yes, they are trying to gauge your interests, but then how deep do you know about those interests, or how deep have you gone into those interests? So they start digging into those and checking your knowledge on those. And then even going from that point, right, the point of optimization, sorry about that. They then started asking things like, okay, you're optimizing. If you're optimizing, what would you particularly look for? So my answer was like looking for shadows and the amount of lights, because more often than not, that's a really big point in rendering, especially when lights start overlapping, and then you have all the number of like light bounces, shadows that have to be rendered, and all of that, right? And then that went even deeper, and they started asking about, okay, for example, if you have VFX on the screen, how would you go about, optimizing VFX. Do you know the difference between mesh renderers, particles, and sprite render? Yeah. And do you know all those differences, in which scenarios to use them? How do you go about optimizing that? And again, those like little instances expose what you know and what you don't know, and what to look out for, and how to create with optimization in mind. So then, just even springboarding off of optimization and lights, they then asked if I knew like different lighting methods, like cheaper lighting methods, instead of actually placing a light. It's like, it's all well and good in the hood just placing a light, but do you know the difference between a point, a spotlight, and a rect light? Which would you think is much cheaper? Which is the most efficient when you're trying to optimize a particular area or scene or whatever? Like, do you know how to use image-based lighting? Now, that was one of those terms that confused me, because I knew them as HDRIs, right? Not image-based lighting. But then again, in retrospect, it was self-explanatory. So they ask you things like that because if you go with image-based lighting is much cheaper than just placing a light, right? And even if you do place a light now, do you go static, dynamic, or stationary? Do you understand what shadow mapping is? Baked light, all of that, baked lighting, how to use those lights, like the placement of static lights with stationary lights, like just all that goodness. It was an interview that lasted about 1 hour and 30 minutes, and another section of it was just tools, right? Part of that was what programming language I knew or could comfortably use, and to what level. So then that kind of went into the level of like blueprint understanding. Can you comfortably work in blueprints? Then that branched off into like tools. Can you create tools using blueprints, using your preferred programming language? Can you edit, can you edit editor tools to have something custom? How can you speed up a workflow? How do you think it would be cool, or what tool would be cool to speed up any workflow you're given, right? Like, do you know how to work with UMG and editor utility widgets to create custom tools for teams? It then just branched off, and that's where I kind of learned that, okay, I might have a very base level understanding of C++ and all its like syntax, right? But I need to take it a bit further so I can be the type of technical artist that can help the next person. I can't just be in my own little lane and box and attend to whatever is given to me, because I had that problem, right? Like, I could do or solve whatever was given to me, but without really thinking about the broader picture and kind of helping the team thrive as well. So I started picking up Python and taking some courses, learning the basics. I decided on Python because it was like, it's one of those languages that are synonymous with automation currently, automation, tool scripting, and it goes well with a lot of DCC packages. So like your Blender and your Substance Painter. Well, I named those because those are the two I kind of like dove into, but there's also Maya. But I don't work in Maya as much anymore. Like, I haven't worked in Maya for over 4 years. And that's the one thing you need to quickly, I think, this is just my own opinion, right? But that's the one thing I quickly had to come to grips with, is that I think as a technical artist, it's not about being the workhorse. Like, you are pumping out work and you are doing it at an exceptional rate, but being the team support, like, it's not about having the spotlight there. You need to be the team support. Wherever someone or a department needs you, you need to know enough to function or help said department or person do their job. I think that makes you a much more valuable, brilliant, and irreplaceable tech artist, because at the end of the day, it's tech and art, right? So you have to be the support for tech and art. You're the bridge for a reason. And I was low-key debating on whether I wanted to dive into general development, version control, because I think if you're in the tech field, or at least you're trying to get into the tech field, you would have some knowledge of version control. Then again, I'm self-taught, so I never really went to university for this, so I don't know if they teach that or not. But understanding version control and working kind of modular in a sense and not destructive, so that would require you to know your Perforce, fork, Git. I know Azure DevOps is another one now. So knowing how to set up a repository and all of that. And I don't think it requires as much, and even just touching on Azure DevOps, it kind of clicked now that I think it would be beneficial for you as a technical artist to know some DevOps principle, continuous CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment, right? Just continuously iterating and understanding that you will continuously iterate, and you need to find ways to make certain things go faster. Sure, you might have the tech team that might handle that, but what can you do for maybe how can you support them or support the art team? Again, bridge, right? And finally, I think the biggest lesson I learned was, because it's video games, right? And a lot of modern day video games are GPU bound. You understand what the GPU does, but you don't understand how it operates under the hood, right? So my biggest but how I would say they caught me out, say that it's a bad thing, it's not a bad thing. But the biggest tell sign that I had a long way to go is I didn't understand the pipeline or the GPU pipeline, right? How everything is rendered on screen, from how each vert is drawn, right? Each vert has its own position or its own unique data, right? So you'll have verts drawn, and then you then have pixels being rendered dependent on how those verts are drawn. And then you have the fragment shader. This is where like now your textures and your lighting affects whatever is drawn on screen and how it is rendered, right? So not understanding something to that level, like this is like, you know, cornerstone fundamentals, like foundations of like how something is rendered. And if you understand that and you start thinking that way, like very detailed, you begin knowing how to optimize things better. You start creating with that mindset of like, oh, I'm doing this and this looks like this because of this. Maybe I could take here, or, you know, add here and so forth, right? But you have that kind of like that level of thinking to like the tiniest grain, to where you work very systematically in your approach, because you are creating from a point of understanding, right? And yes, you can make something look nice, but how does it look nice? You know, you understand how this light is rendering this thing, or how this texture is, you know, rendering this thing. But what's the drawback of using this light or having the texture this big? Like, do you see any fundamental differences when the texture is 2K, 4K, or 1K? Like, where can you cut back while retaining that type of detail? And yes, I'm digressing from the original point of how the GPU works, so it feels like that. But that's the importance of working from understanding, because you know how the GPU is drawing things on screen and how the GPU is rendering each drawn thing as a frame on screen. So you constantly know how to create and what to look out for. But anyway, that's the end of the video. I don't think I have anything more to share. Hopefully this helps someone, and hopefully you enjoyed, you know, listening to me yap. But yeah, if you have any suggestions on how to improve the content, how to make it more engaging, leave a comment, you know, like it, dislike it, you know, any type of engagement says a lot. So like, share, subscribe, or whatever the YouTubers say, you know. Until next time.